Say it slowly, with certainty. Anxiety often moves before you do. You know the feeling. A dozen small decisions arrive, and your body closes the door for you. A simple plan becomes a ledger of possible regrets, a text left unsent because you imagine every awkward reply, a weekend unbooked because you foresee the wrong weather, the wrong company, the wrong version of yourself. It's not that you can't choose. It's that something else is choosing for you first, a filter of fear that edits the world before you ever see your options. Imagine that filter as a dimmer switch. It lowers the light on possibilities, leaving only silhouettes of danger. You lean towards safety because the rest looks blurry, risky, too loud. You are intelligent, capable, thoughtful, and still you wake one morning surprised by how small your map of life has grown. The consequence is subtle at first. Mental fatigue that accumulates like unread emails, a slow shrinking of the life you might have had, a quiet account of missed chances that no one else keeps but you. Lower your voice here. Pause. Indecision is not neutrality. It's a decision made by fear. That sentence lands like a stone in a pond. It changes the sound of everything. Indecision is not the absence of choice. It is a selection made on your behalf by a protective, if overactive, system. Knowing that shifts the task. Reclaiming choice doesn't mean faking confidence or making big leaps overnight. It begins with noticing who is choosing, with naming the hesitance and watching it, with small tests that reteach your muscles how to decide. So start here. Be curious about the mover behind your pause. Notice the narratives of regret and pain that arrive first. You don't have to outshout them immediately, just notice. If this landed for you, like the video and answer one question in the comments. What decision have you been postponing? Stay with us. The next episode will gently explore how to rebuild trust in your own choices. You are not bad at deciding. Something else decides first. It arrives before you have time to weigh pros and cons, before you can map outcomes or imagine yourself on the other side. It is a hush that narrows the field. The phone call you don't return, the application you never open, the conversation you postpone. That hush has a logic. It says, avoid the risk of regret, avoid the sting of future pain, avoid the embarrassment of being wrong. It promises safety, and for a moment it feels like wisdom. Slowly, though, you begin to see the cost. Small choices fold into bigger patterns. When anxiety moves first, your world steadily compresses. Jobs you might have tried stay hypothetical. Dates that could have taught you something never happen. Projects shrink into one day. Each deferred decision is not neutral. It's a silent veto issued by a protective part of you. It edits reality, filtering out options before you even know they were there. The consequences are quiet but cumulative. Mental energy wanes from the constant low-level alert, a wondering about every small step, a loop of what-ifs that eats attention. Life gets lighter in novelty and heavier in caution. You become competent at avoidance, which feels clever until you notice the slow erosion of trust in yourself. You start to doubt not only your choices, but your capacity to choose at all. Here's a sharp, clarifying truth. Indecision is not neutrality. It is a decision in favor of fear. That recognition is not a judgment. It is a turning point. Reclaiming choice doesn't demand an overnight surge of confidence. It begins with a quieter, kinder question. Who is choosing right now? Name the voice that vetoes. Notice the sensations, the tightened chest, the imagined catastrophe, and separate those from the evidence on the table. Soft, grounded tone. Try this. When you notice hesitation, pause and ask, is this fear deciding for me? That small practice creates space for another voice, your considered self, to speak. If this landed for you, like the video and answer one question in the comments. What decision have you been postponing? Next episode, we'll look at how to rebuild trust in your own choices, step by steady step. You are not bad at deciding. Something else decides first. Anxiety is not just a feeling, it's a preemptive editor. Before you even list an option, it has already run through a catalog of futures, searching for pain, for regret, for the smallest thread that could unravel. It marks things risky, unsafe, stupid, and quietly removes them from the table. What remains looks smaller, bleaker, safer. You are left choosing between less and less. Watch how this plays out in ordinary moments. A message sits unread because your mind rehearses every way it could go wrong. A weekend plan shrinks because you've already imagined the one awkward conversation, the one trace of discomfort. A career idea never reaches a second draft because your inner critic translates "what if" into a verdict. Don't try. These aren't dramatic failures. They are a slow, consistent narrowing. Each avoided choice is a pocket of life folded away. There's a cost. Mental energy bleeds out in perpetual simulation, imagining consequences, scoring outcomes, rehearsing escapes. Your calendar fills with sameness because sameness feels safe. Small joys go unclaimed because they require a choice the nervous system won't permit. Over time, you notice a quieter loss, trust in yourself. You begin to suspect that your capacity for good judgment was always overrated. You ask others, you procrastinate, you live in the shadow of what you might have done. Lower voice. Pause. Then a simple, sharp observation lands. Indecision is not neutrality. When you don't choose, a choice has still been made by fear. This reframing doesn't shame you. It clarifies agency. If fear has been steering, the first step is not to bully confidence into being. It is to notice who is at the wheel. So pause now and look inward without judgment. Who is choosing for you here? The calm you or the anxious editor? Name it. Notice the pattern. That noticing is the hinge where change begins. If this landed with you, like the video and answer one question in the comments. What decision have you been postponing? And stay tuned. Next episode explores how to rebuild trust in your own choices. You think of indecision as a neutral pause, a blank space where the right answer might arrive. But pause and look closer. Something else is moving inside that blank. Anxiety is trimming the menu before you see it. It whispers the worst outcome stories, magnifies a single possible mistake until every option looks like a cliff edge. Suddenly, choosing coffee or switching careers feels weighted as if the universe hinges on that small moment. You notice the pattern in ordinary scenes. A text sits unread because the what-if scenarios crowd your attention. What if I say the wrong thing? What if they judge me? A promotion goes unasked for because you rehearse possible rejection on loop. An invitation is declined because the imagined future pain, awkward small talk, embarrassment, regret, seems more certain than the potential joy. Anxiety doesn't just make you hesitate. It predecides by privileging avoidance as safety. There's a logic to that filter. Pain is vivid, potential loss feels immediate, and your mind is wired to protect. But protection becomes confinement. The cost is subtle at first. A missed dinner, a quiet, maybe next time, then accumulates. Days narrow. Your calendar fills with what feels safe instead of what's meaningful. Decision-making itself becomes tiring. Each choice requires a small battle. Over time, you begin to doubt the basic fact of your competence, as if the ability to choose were a trait you'd misplaced. So the first shift isn't forcing bravery, it's noticing authorship. Who is deciding when you opt out? Name the voice that edits your options. Watch how it frames outcomes, how it exaggerates loss and ignores small gains. That noticing loosens the edit. You can start with tiny experiments. Low-stakes choices that reveal consequences are rarely catastrophic, and your capacity to live with an imperfect outcome is larger than anxiety predicts. If this landed with you, like the video, and answer one question in the comments. What decision have you been postponing? And stay tuned. The next episode will focus on rebuilding quiet trust in your own choices, step by step. There's a simple, sharp realization that settles like a stone. Indecision is not neutrality. It's an answer, a choice that fear offers up before you even know there's a question. You watch it happen. A thin, automatic filter moves across the world, dulling options that feel risky, softening the edges of possibility until only safe remains. That filter isn't wisdom. It's protection in disguise, and its currency is avoidance. When you see it this way, the experience shifts. The weight on your chest isn't proof that you're incapable. It's a mechanism at work. You begin to notice patterns. Decisions that ought to feel simple become heavy because fear has trimmed them down in private. You are capable, but your awareness has been edited. That editing saves you from imagined pain, sure, and in doing so it steals small experiments, quiet joys, the practice that builds trust in yourself. Reclaiming choice doesn't mean flipping a switch and becoming certain. It begins with noticing who is choosing. Before you stew, stop. Breathe twice. Name what's moving first. A quick tightening in your stomach, a rehearsed worst case, a voice that says, what if? Don't argue with it. Observe it, like a weather report. There's anxiety coming from the left. Giving it a name loosens its authority. Then ask a gentle question. If not this avoidance, then what? Not to force a perfect plan, but to open a small possibility you can test, a micro-decision. Can you choose one tiny thing to try for a day, or one step you can reverse easily? These are not grand declarations of bravery. They are data points. Each tiny experiment chips away at the myth that fear is the default decision maker. You won't become unafraid overnight, and you don't need to. Practice noticing, naming, and nudging. Let curiosity sit beside caution rather than being swallowed by it. If this landed with you, like the video, and answer one question in the comments. What decision have you been postponing? In the next episode, we'll explore how to rebuild trust in your own choices, quietly, step by step. You learn to recognize the quiet patterns. At first, it's almost invisible, a tightened jaw, the way your mind rehearses worst-case endings, the sudden urge to delay, as if delay itself is safety. Those small signals are not neutral background noise. They are the voice that speaks before you do. When you slow down enough to hear it, you see that indecision isn't a neutral pause. It's a choice made by fear, trimming options so only the safe ones remain visible. Think of a decision as a room with many doors. Anxiety stands near the doorway and dims the light. You can't see the room clearly, so you assume there is only one possible exit. That assumption feels real because your body and attention endorse it. That's the point. Something else is doing the choosing for you, and it does so out of protection, not truth. Protection can be useful, but left unchecked it becomes a veto on life. So what do? Start with noticing. When a choice feels heavy, let curiosity lead. Where in your body is the heaviness? What story is running in your head about what will happen if you choose differently? Name the feeling, this is anxiety, and give it a small, honest appraisal. You are not trying to erase the fear. You are mapping its territory. Once you can see the filter, you can begin to test its edges. Small experiments matter. Pick a minor decision you've been postponing and commit to a single, reversible action. Notice who wants to stop you. Ask, calmly, is this fear protecting me or shrinking me? Allow the answer to be partial. Trust is rebuilt by repeated, gentle evidence, not by grand proclamations of confidence. If this landed with you, like the video, and answer one question in the comments. What decision have you been postponing? And stay tuned. The next episode will guide you through practical steps to rebuild trust in your own choices. You tell yourself you're indecisive, as if indecision were a character flaw you were born with. But the truth feels different when you pay attention. Something else often decides first. Anxiety moves before you do. A quick, invisible editor that trims options, dims possibilities, and makes small choices look like life or death dilemmas. You feel it in the body first, tightness in the chest, a tightening in the throat, the way your hands hesitate over a reply or a booking page. The world narrows not because you lack intelligence or taste, but because a filter is doing the sorting for you, prioritizing safety over curiosity, risk over reward. So you start to notice patterns. A meeting request becomes an avalanche. A dinner invitation turns into hours of rehearsal in your head. Each avoided decision adds another quiet weight. Mental fatigue that shows up as fog, a life that feels smaller by degrees, opportunities you can't even remember missing until you look back and feel the hollowness. Trust in yourself phrase, not overnight, but stitch by stitch. You begin to suspect the worst about your own judgment, and that suspicion becomes another reason to avoid deciding. Indecision is not neutrality. It's a decision made by fear. Lower voice, pause. When that lands, it changes the game. You don't need to manufacture sudden courage. Reclaiming choice starts with a quieter move, noticing who is choosing. Name the mover, anxiety, habit, the voice saying, what if, and treat it like any other information, not the boss of you. Let small experiments be your laboratory. Choose something trivial and let the consequence be small enough to handle. Notice how your body reacts. Note the stories your mind invents about regret and see them for what they are, scenarios, not inevitabilities. This is not a promise of instant certainty. It's an invitation, curiosity as practice, noticing as power. If this landed with you, like the video, and answer one question in the comments. What decision have you been postponing? And stay tuned. The next episode explores how to rebuild trust in your own choices. You begin to notice the pattern like a soft ache. Decisions feel heavy because something else has already chosen for you. It shows up as a tightness in your chest, a stream of what-ifs, a sudden narrowing where options used to be. Lower your voice. Pause. That narrowing is not neutral. It's an agent, a fear that edits possibilities before you can even name them. So you learn to watch, not fight. First, catch the moment when you are about to defer. Name it quietly. Anxiety is moving. Give it a label that separates it from you. When you do this, the scene changes. The feeling loses the illusion of total control. You realize there is a gap between impulse and action, small, but real, and that gap is where choice can return. You don't need to manufacture courage or pretend certainty. Start with micro-decisions. Choose the playlist, the coffee, the route you walk. Treat them as experiments, not tests of worth. Every tiny choice you make that isn't governed by avoidance is a data point you can trust. You're recalibrating a muscle that's been and used. It will respond to repetition, not willpower. Notice how consequences feel different when you decide from curiosity instead of fear. Regret, when it comes, is information rather than indictment. Even choosing poorly becomes a form of learning instead of proof that you're fundamentally flawed. Over time, the horizon expands. Options return some of their color, and your life grows in small, insistent ways. Be patient. Rebuilding trust in yourself is gradual and kind. When doubt creeps in, ask a simple question. Who is choosing right now? If it's the fear talking, acknowledge it, and then choose a next step that's small and visible. If you miss a step, don't escalate the mistake into a verdict about your character. Repetition, not drama, remakes habits. Take a moment now. What's one tiny decision you can make in the next hour that's for you and not for avoidance? If this landed for you, like the video and answer one question in the comments. What decision have you been postponing? And stay tuned. Next episode, we'll explore practical steps to rebuild trust in your own choices. Say it slowly, with certainty. Anxiety often moves before you do. You begin to see the shape of it, not as an abstract enemy, but as a fast-moving editor that cuts scenes out of your life. The insight lands. Indecision is not neutrality. When you stall, something else has already chosen for you. Fear has chosen safety. Avoidance has chosen a smaller life. What shifts now is the question, not the pressure to be brave. Start by noticing who is choosing. When a choice arrives, pause for a breath. Name the voice in your head. Is this curiosity, preference, or the anxious narrator cataloging worst-case scenarios? Saying it aloud, that's anxiety speaking, doesn't make the anxiety vanish, but it hands you perspective. Perspective dissolves the illusion that you are powerless. Reclaiming choice begins with tiny, deliberate tests. Pick a small, low-stakes decision, the coffee shop you try tomorrow, the route you take home, the shirt you wear, and set a short deadline. Treat it like an experiment. Make the choice, note what happens, and allow the outcome to be merely data, not a verdict on your worth. Over time, these small experiments build evidence that choices don't always end in catastrophe. Most of them end in manageable, sometimes pleasant, ordinary results. Let curiosity replace the demand for certainty. Ask, what would I do if I granted myself permission to be wrong? Practice lowering the stakes on meaning. Confidence is not suddenly bestowed. It's earned in increments by showing up and tallying the real outcomes against anxiety's predictions. Be kind in this process. Fatigue and past mistakes have trained you to expect failure. Reorient by treating decision-making like muscle work. Rest when you need it, strengthen by repetition, and track the wins, even the tiny ones. Keep a simple log. Decision, what felt anxious, what actually happened. The log becomes your evidence ledger, the slow rewriting of your internal story. If this landed for you, like the video and answer one question in the comments. What decision have you been postponing? And join me next time as we begin rebuilding trust in your own choices. Say it slowly, with certainty. Anxiety often moves before you do. You felt it, that small, immediate motion that settles in your chest and edits the menu of possibilities. It's not neutrality. It's a choice made by fear, wearing the disguise of caution. And because it moves first, the life that remains for you to choose from becomes a smaller, quieter map. You begin to notice patterns. a tiny ache when someone asks for your preference, a loop of what if that ends conversations before they start. The world piles options on the shelf. Anxiety takes one down and says, "This one is safest." You obey because obedience is easier than arguing with a voice that promises protection. But safety here is a narrowing, not a shelter. Over time, the cost is not dramatic drama but slow attrition. Time, curiosity, small joys deferred until they feel like risks. This is the point where reorientation feels less like a heroic overhaul and more like a careful skill. Reclaiming choice begins with two small acts. First, notice who is choosing. When a decision leans toward avoidance, ask quietly, "Is this mine, or is it fear wearing my face?" Say the question out loud if you need to. Name the mover, call it anxiety or caution or whatever fits. Naming separates the force from you. Second, reframe neutrality. Indecision is not absence of direction. It is a default decision made by something other than you. Recognizing that helps you stop waiting for confidence to arrive fully formed. You don't have to be brave all at once. Test select choices like low-stakes experiments. Choose the coffee you didn't before. Reply to the message you've delayed. Each small, intentional choice collects evidence that you can act from your own taste, not only from fear. Over time, those tiny calibrations rebuild a trust that's been frayed by habit. Lower voice, pause. If this landed with you, like the video and answer one question in the comments. What decision have you been postponing? And when you're ready, stick around. In the next episode, we'll begin to explore how to rebuild trust in your own choices, step by careful step. You aren't powerless because you lack options. You're dimmed by a filter that decides for you. The first breath of reclaiming choice is small. Notice. When a decision tightens in your chest, don't try to outmuscle it. Pause. Name the voice that moved first. Is it the whisper of what if, the calculation of loss, the rehearsed excuse that keeps you safe? Speak it aloud, silently, however it lands. You are not trying to defeat fear in a single day. You are learning to recognize who's been speaking all along. Once you can see the filter, the work becomes gentle, almost experimental. Treat each choice like a microlab. Start with tiny, low-stakes tests, a different route to work, a new dish at lunch, an email sent a day earlier than your comfort zone allows. Notice how the body answers when you choose versus when fear chooses. Keep your questions simple. What did I expect would happen? What actually happened? The gap between expectation and outcome is where you reclaim information instead of surrendering power. Trust rebuilds slowly because you've been listening to someone else for a long time. Recalibration is not about forcing confidence. It's about collecting small proofs that you can decide and live. Record them. A note, a timer, a small tally, whatever makes the evidence visible. Over time, those tiny proofs add up and tilt the balance toward you. There will be days when the old filter roars back. That's not failure. It's memory. Treat it as data, not verdict. Return to simple queries, to the experiments, to the small invitations you can accept or refuse by your own will. The liberation is not dramatic. It's steady, a practice of noticing, of naming, of choosing with curiosity instead of capitulation. If this landed with you, please like the video and answer one question in the comments. What decision have you been postponing? And stay tuned. The next episode will explore practical steps for rebuilding trust in your own choices. You haven't been bad at deciding. You've been interrupted. Before you even weigh options, before your values get a chance to speak, something else moves, quick, quiet, urgent. It calls out danger you haven't yet encountered and edits the menu of what's possible. The result isn't freedom, it's compression. Choices that should feel like small, ordinary moves become heavy and fateful. You grow tired faster. The world narrows. Opportunities slip by unnoticed, and the thing that hurts most is how little you trust yourself afterward. Now, quietly, indecision is not neutrality. It's a decision made by fear. Saying that aloud is not blame. It's a frame. When you see indecision this way, it stops being an amorphous flaw and becomes something you can name and examine. That shift gives you a foothold. You begin to notice the pattern. The anticipatory worst case that shows up first, the imagined regret that takes up all the space, the habit of postponement that feels safe because it avoids being wrong. Reclaiming choice doesn't mean forcing confidence overnight or committing to grand gestures. It begins with a single, simple question. Who is choosing right now? Your curiosity or your fear? Pause long enough to answer it. Name the feeling. Breathe. Give yourself permission to choose from a smaller scale. Try an experiment, set a tiny deadline, or pick the option that aligns most clearly with what you value, not what your worry predicted. Over time, those small, intentional acts rebuild something quieter and truer than certainty. They rebuild trust. Trust in your ability to move, to adapt, to feel regret, and survive it. Trust that a life with small, honest decisions will feel less heavy and more real. If this landed with you, like the video and answer one question in the comments. What decision have you been postponing? I'll read them, and in the next episode, we'll start rebuilding that trust. Practical steps, not pressure.